chuckleitic. I'm a reenactor. That means I tend to wear funny clothes at odd times and let people stare at me when I talk about history. And for 36 years in the classroom, that's exactly what I did. I would dress up all day, bring in artifacts of realia, get a bunch of funny looks from students and adults, and it somehow made the subject connect with the kids. So this was my approach. Well, now, after 36 years of being in the classroom, I have a room at the house that is bursting to capacity as far as all the garb in there. Plus there's stuff scattered around the house, and there's the realia. So I have all that garb. I have a desire to bring the past to life, or passion actually, and I have a desire to preserve landmarks. And that's particularly telling because of what I've been covering just, during the summer, where there was a lot of controversy about the Father Serra statue outside of Ventura City Hall, and that finally got moved. And there was the fire at Mission San Gabriel, which was pretty devastating. They're in the process of rebuilding. And when I filmed earlier at Mission San Fernando, where I'm headed back to, there'd been a statue of Father Serra across the street in Brand Park, and that was there in June. Well, early November it's gone. So, but candles were lit there, which tells me that not everybody agreed with the issue of removing the statue, but it's a landmark that went away. So I'm trying to create a visual record using the dressing up to kind of put the time periods a bit more in focus. And I like to very pretentiously call it my Mission Odyssey. So what I'm doing today is I'm going 15 miles north of Mission San Fernando to an Estancia, and that's a Rancho that was created in 1804, and it's basically by Castaic, Valencia. Actually, it's on the land that Magic Mountain is currently on, and there's not even a marker there anymore. So I want to try to create that visual record. What I'm hoping is that you're going to stick with me. When I began this Mission Odyssey, I envisioned going up the Camino Real, and that would be it, visiting each of the missions. I had no idea that I was going to be in search of an estancia. I didn't even know what an estancia was, but here I am. When the Portola expedition came through this area in 1769, Father Crespi, who was traveling with the expedition, named it the Cañada de Santa Clara. The people living here were mostly the Tataviam, the ones who dwelt on the south-facing slopes. Up the Tejon Pass, operative word is up, because it's really uphill, were the Catanemuk, or at least some of them, and to the west were the Chumash. Early in 1804, the Padres at Mission San Fernando Rey de España found out that Francisco Avila had staked out territory and he was building a rancho, in this area. And the Padres were incensed by this. They felt it was their territory to administer, and they went to Governor Arriaga, who ended up supporting their claim. So because of that, now that Avila's been given the boot, the Padres will end up establishing an estancia, and that will be San Francisco Xavier. And the estancias, these are different from some of the things we've been looking at. There's the missions, which had full-time Padres. There were the asistancias. Those were the spin-off missions that were intended to grow up into full-time missions. They really tended not to have full-time Padres. I mentioned the presidios, the ones that guarded all these Spanish attempts at colonization. Now there's the estancias, and the estancias were ranchos that were in the business of raising food and raising cattle. That's their function. So this is going to be an estancia. There were later some claims made that this was going to grow up, or did grow up, into an asistancia, but I haven't found any documentation that supports that. Under Fathers Pedro Munoz and Jose de Miguel, the estancia gets built. 2 large buildings get built that are over 100 feet long. They probably had like 5 adobe rooms each. There were a couple of walls with gates that were connecting the 2 buildings. So this isn't a quadrangle like a traditional mission. And what the Padres are going to be encouraging the Tataviam to do is they're going to be fencing in the area as far west as Comulos, and they're building a dam. They're trying to harness the water, because what they're doing, remember, they are going to be growing crops, they're going to be raising cattle. And oh, by the way, I don't know if the cattle that were raised here ended up bearing the brand of Mission San Fernando, but that would be pretty likely. And that also probably added to, or beefed up, well, that was a interesting turn of phrase. They added to the numbers of the cattle and the horses that were raised through Mission San Fernando. The villages of Chaguayanga and Comulos were obliged to grow the wheat and raise the cattle. In time, the estancia begins to prosper. Crops are grown, cattle are raised, horses are raised. And I read an account where like 3,000 pounds of grain was shipped to Santa Barbara. And I did a little thinking about this and realized the reason the grain was shipped to Santa Barbara rather than to Mission San Fernando, the mother mission, is that Mission San Fernando, and that means also the Estancia San Francisco, were in the 2nd Military District. So that meant they were obligated to help support the Presidio and ultimately the Pueblo that would develop, in Santa Barbara. There's the 4 military districts and the Tataviam petroglyph. There are certain forces you can't fight. And the Tataviam leaders realized this in time, and they saw their culture being trampled upon, they saw their beliefs being trampled upon, and what they chose to do is take their sacred artifacts and preserve them, or maybe at least hide them from desecration from the Spanish. And so there's a cave back there. Actually, it's on the other side of the hill. It's in the Chiquita landfill area, and they took their artifacts. They placed those artifacts in the cave, and those artifacts were not discovered until about 1884. And at least, even though they were sold, at least most of those artifacts have ended up in museums to at least commemorate the culture. In 1884, Everett and McCoy Pyle were brothers, found the cave of the San Martins and looted the Tataviam artifacts. They were finding stone axe heads, ceremonial obsidian knives, some crystals, and some scepters, which they sold to Stephen Bowers. Trouble was brewing beyond the borders of Estancia San Francisco. Now in 1824, there was a revolt by the Chumash that started up at the Santa Ynez and La Purísima missions, and it spread and it went down to Santa Barbara, and I believe it also involved Mission San Buenaventura. The reason I'm mentioning this part is Estancia San Francisco plays a part in it, because there were soldados de cuero who ended up traveling from the Presidio in Santa Barbara, and they were hunting down people who were involved in the revolt, and some of them were Tatavians, and they made it as far as the Camulas area. Now, 1824, that year of the Chumash Revolt, which had a whole bunch of the Spanish really nervous. Well, apparently there was a lieutenant named Antonio de Valle who was involved in smashing the revolt and suppressing it. And somehow he came into possession of the Estancia. Even though this was supposed to be a clerical thing, the clergy were supposed to be running it. Somehow he is the guy in charge. And he's going to come into possession of, the area more formally later on. One of the things that he'll be doing is he'll be overseeing, when secularization takes place, he's going to oversee the inventory of the goods at Mission San Fernando, Rey de España. Then oddly enough, 1839, he gets his reward. He formally gets former Estancia and now the Rancho San Francisco. Don Antonio submitted this diseño de terreno to get the land. Are you kidding me? A year ago, I didn't even know Rancho San Francisco Xavier had existed. Now I have too much material. That means I gotta come back here and do another video. So I hope you stick with me.